Hey Patrick, how you doing? Welcome to the third episode, I believe, of the Source Branch. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do, what your background is, and yeah, kind of what you do at Nutrient.
Sure. Hi, my name is Patrick. I work in the core team. The core team is the team that handles all the, well, one of the teams that handles all the PDF things at Nutrient, and is our shared code base for many of our products. That's written in C++. I've been doing that for a long, long time, and I can write PDFs in Notepad if I have to.
So would that mean you would tell people that you're a PDF engineer, or how would you describe yourself? What type of engineer are you if you're a type of engineer?
Yeah, I feel like PDF engineer will pretty much hit it. That's pretty good.
What
Yeah.
languages have you like give 'em a language, like some people say, "Oh, I'm a front-end engineer, I'm a back-end engineer. I do DevOps," like
It's more like backendy stuff. It's not a server backend. It's just a SDK backend. But yeah, it's C++. And because I'm in the position that I am, where there's lots of products depending on me, I try to dabble in all those languages to be Java, Kotlin, TypeScript, Swift, whatever comes around.
yeah, we'll dive into more about the whole structure of maybe core and how it sits in the monorepo and things like that. But before we jump into that, I kind of want to just give the audience an idea, and I love these questions because each story is different. Tell me how, you know, what was your original, how did you get into computers? What's the origin story? When did you start programming? How did you know this was going to become your job? And what did what drove you to pick this as your career? Or what was the passion? And start from the beginning.
I can start from the beginning. It's a if I can still remember it, it's been a long time. I just know there was always a computer at home, and I always wanted to mess with it. And early enough, I got into Linux, and that took me like 2 weeks before I could run it because I had to compile a kernel and compile other software, and that was super interesting to me. And it obviously didn't work, so I looked into it more and more, and from there it just became a I'm not doing anything but sit at my computer and try to make it run and work. That became more and more interesting, so I wrote stuff too.
Would you say that how old were you when you first what's your earliest memory of getting on a computer and doing stuff with it?
I mean, the very earliest thing was just trying to run games on a computer. I have no idea how old I was, but it was the fun DOS time where you had different configurations to get it to run that game and that game, and there was like the littlest bit of programming, getting different configurations set up for I think Street Fighter and Doom or something, and they didn't work on the same.
Were these PC games or were these
Yes,
okay.
that was PC
Uh,
games.
I love the origin stories. I like to tell people, I was lucky enough that we had a computer. I think I was probably either 11 or 12 maybe. And I remember the good old days with modems. This was before even fiber or even dial-up, it was just the old,
Oh
as
yeah.
you get on. Um, and then I remember fast forwarding some moments for me that were I remember the web and AOL and man, it was like the Wild Wild West. And I remember being able to, I like to tell people I started my own first web page on Angel Fire, and it was like, holy crap, I can do a carousel of rainbow colored text, and this was so cool. Um, I don't know, you didn't grow up in the US, but you're in the US now.
Yes.
Uh, I mean, I'm obviously coming from a very US centric origin and viewpoint. How was that like and where you're from? And why don't you tell people where you're from?
I'm from Austria originally. I grew up in a little town an hour from Vienna, and there was no internet. It was curious in the beginning. I think our AOL was MSN, the Microsoft network. They were pretty early on, and I remember getting a little told off that it shouldn't be so much on the internet because it was expensive, because still per minute or something. But yeah, it took me a while to realize the MSM portal isn't the internet, and from there we went,
Do you in those early days, did how did you connect with other people? How did you learn it? Like, did you have someone in your family that was interested in it? Did you meet other
No,
friends? Yeah, like
not
how did
really. It was just me. But this is like sense of the childhood or something. Like MSN had a comic chat or something, and I talked with people there. And from there, I realized IRC might be a little fancier, and did that. And there, I learned most of the things I learned from there in the beginning. Just hanging out in the right tech channels and.
you still do this now as well? Like, I mean, I know uh obviously it's no longer IRC. There's different reasons. Why don't you tell people about, even what you do? I would say even like let's say even outside of work, and what are you interested in, and how do you connect with people even in current times?
I'm mostly not super active anymore, thanks to my little kiddo, who takes up a lot of my time. But I'm still always hanging out in a tech-related Discord where I met a few people that are nice and try to, you know, stay up to date on things when I'm not playing with dinosaurs.
So the first language you programmed in, I assume, was not C++, plus plus, or was that, what was
It
the
was
first
C.
kind of language? C, right? And
It was C.
why did you pick C, and why did you dive there, and how did you make the transition from going to C to C++? plus plus?
I'm honestly not quite sure why I picked up C in the beginning. It was like the hardest thing I could have done. But I feel like it was just because, as I mentioned before, I'm doing Linux stuff and the kernel, and I had to compile the kernel, so I knew there was a C compiler, and I figured I'll go from there, and that's what I knew. I'm not sure if I would make the same choice today. There's better choices.
I remember the first language, other than I would say just basic HTML. I mean, this was even before CSS, like, then you had like JavaScript. I kind of learned a little bit of that. I went to college. College, they tried to teach Java. I hated Java. Then like I kind of left it, came back to kind of CSS and making these beautiful websites and how much easier it was, but you had different browsers and all these things. Um, but I remember in high school, we had a programming class, and Turbo Pascal was the language
Oh
they
yeah.
taught you. And again, my string for me is always gaming. That's both, I don't know, the reason I probably got into computers. I mean, I still game now. But like the first thing I remember trying to do in Turbo Pascal in high school was there was a BBS game. It was a text-based MUD that you could log in, and it was Pacific time is when the server reset. So I'd wake up at like 3 a.m. This is nuts to get my new lives to try to go at it. And it was the text-based mud was called Usurper, and it had like a leaderboard, and you could get weapons or this, and you had a character you tried to do. What are some of the early games that you played?
Honestly, I'm not quite sure. The one that stands out in my mind the most is like early Star Wars first person shooter, but I can't remember what it was. But
TIE
Doom
Fighter?
stylish. Yeah,
Was it?
I
Yeah,
can't
TIE
remember.
Fighter was there. I'm trying to think of the other
I
ones
did
that
that
were.
too, but there was a first person shooter thing that was pretty cool. It still always pops in my head, but can't remember the name of it.
Let Give us some idea of time here. Like, did you go to college? Were you already programming pre-college? Like, when would you say you really dove in and this was like, yeah, I like this. I'm gonna do this.
It was like I didn't go to college. I kind of made the mistake that during my years where I should be learning with help from teachers, I just did it all myself on the computer, and everyone was very worried about me because I'm not learning anything. But it turns out I learned stuff just differently. You know, when I was, I think, 16 or something, I just started not doing anything else and was very, very bad at school, which, you know.
I think that's actually a pretty common path, either both the self-taught programmer as well as the like, I went to college, this isn't for me, I'm gonna drop out and not care because I can learn this stuff faster by talking to friends or reading on the internet or looking at projects or just trying to build stuff, right? Um, so then like fast forward then, okay, you're 16, you're just starting to program. What was the first time you had a job or like a
I
task or like you're gonna do this and you're gonna get paid for it?
I was extremely lucky that I found a company in Vienna hiring. There was just a few people, just a CTO and the CEO basically, and I was the first hire. And we were doing a Linux thin client system because I knew Linux, so well I did that. But it also involved a lot of programming, a lot of C, and um, I learned so much from these people and just got there and everyone was happy and I was happy, and since then it kind of, I feel like when you don't have the advantage of a college or something education, if you land a first good job where you really, where people teach you and you actually show that you can do this, it all worked out from then on.
How did you meet them? What was that application like? Like, how did you even convince them that
The
they should hire you?
He still has that application. It was someone from the IRC channel I was in. I think it was a Linux.at or something, such a Linux for Austria channel. And someone, a friend there, said, "Hey, they're looking for people." And I literally wrote him, "Hey, nickname from IRC, Space told me you're hiring. Wanna interview me?" And that's basically what I did. And they actually wanted to interview me. I'm not sure why. I wouldn't.
So you said it was Linux based stuff, a lot of programming, but what was the thing doing? What was what was the ultimate thing you were building?
That was literally little computer boxes with which you can connect to other servers. Like it was back in the day, we all had our big Windows remote desktop servers and whatnot, and these were just for people to work on those servers. They just had a little computer. They couldn't do
Nice.
anything but connect to other things.
So from there, how long did you stay? What was your next job?
It was like I was there for a long time. It was like 6, 7 years or something. Years don't make sense in my brain. So when I was saying I'm not sure how old I am, how long something took, time has no meaning. I'm not sure why. It's but it was a long time, and the then I got my next job at some point, which was main. It was actually where I met Marcus, which you all don't know, but he works at Nutrient. He taught me a
Yeah,
lot.
that's actually a really cool story as well, because uh, it's funny telling the story about PSPDFKit, and we'll definitely get to it. But Marcus, we hired you fairly early, and then you introduced us to Marcus a little bit later, and now you all have been here for a while, and I think, God, I don't think the company would be the company if it wasn't for both of you. So the networking effect of both him wanting to come over and here work for you, probably because he knew you, as well as you vouching this is a good person, we should hire him. I think he could do this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, what were you doing at that second job then? So you met Marcus. What was that? What were you working on, and what was ultimately the thing doing?
Um, we just built a lot of random stuff. It was more like public facing products, and they were in. I learned a lot about databases there and about. Marcus introduced me to Java because that was used a lot there, and there was just a lot of random stuff happening, honestly.
How did you come to work at what was called at the time PSPDFKit? What the company me and two other guys founded and
Yeah,
ultimately became Nutrient. How were you introduced?
it's interesting because it was IRC again. Um, I literally have all my jobs from that one IRC channel. It's a good one. But yeah, a friend of mine knew Martin and recommended me. And Martin reached out and we interviewed and did stuff.
So this would have been, if I recall, let me get the timing right. I believe this would have been 2015 or was it 2016?
I think it was 14 or 15 or something. I've been here, I
Yeah.
don't know, 10, 11 years. It's been a long
And I'm
time.
going to tell it from my viewpoint. The Martin Schur is the one of my co-founders is actually, at Nutrient helping us out. He was kind of always the back end, I think, out of, if you had Peter who was ultimately the front end specialist and Martin really was kind of the back end architect, if you want to call it like that. Um, I believe the reason you came on was because we had just decided to go from the iOS framework that was built around Apple's renderer. So like we weren't even really a PDF company at all, even though we were creating a viewer to basically put a magazine app on an iPhone at the time. I don't think tablets were out yet. And we decided we needed to go to Android, and a beautiful thing happened where one of the major, let's say, older PDF players sold just their renderer to Google, and Google, through the Chromium open source project, open sourced this viewer. And what everybody now knows, and when you open up PDF in Chrome, beautiful PDFium. And I believe you were brought on to kind of implement that and ultimately create the mono repo that now so that we could replace Apple's renderer and we'd have a renderer for the Android framework. Is that right?
Almost. I was actually just hired as an iOS engineer.
Oh wow. I did not no, I don't remember
Yeah,
this.
I was just an
Um,
iOS engineer. But shortly after I joined, this whole PDFium thing happened, and I saw my good old C++ and figured I'll just work on that, and no one said no, and at some point they said, yeah, you do that. And
so tell me about this. Have you always passionately loved and dreamed about PDFs from a little baby, and then you got into this company and you're like, yes, PDFs, I've found my niche.
of course, I mean, who doesn't? It's a PDF. No, I literally knew nothing about PDFs except that they're always annoying when you have to open them. Um, just getting better thanks to us.
Thanks to you, I think more than but thanks for me, man. Um,
Well,
so so you end up taking PDFium and what interests you. Like, what interests you in the problem? What is the always, when you're like, I program because I like to X. And I mean, I've talked to various people, I know a bunch of software engineers. Some of them is like, I program because I like building things, or, and they have the Lego story where they like used to love Legos, right? Or there's like, I program because I don't know, I like to solve puzzles, right? And puzzles are really interesting, so I like getting the puzzle and figuring it out. And I'm sure there's more of these. How would you characterize what drives your passion for software engineering, and what do you like about it?
I know there's many people who like that, as you explained, the solving puzzles and whatnot. And that is nice, but I basically just want to solve problems. I like when things are fixed. That makes me happy. And I like
Uh,
making
The,
things better.
the one thing I love about that, I think it's a good segue. Uh, would you describe, your approach to software engineering as like, I need to think really hard and architect this beautiful, like, some people love code structure, clean code. Oh man, look at how well designed my solution is that I did, and this is the way to do it. Or, then you have the classic, I hack things together. and get it done. And how do you where would you put yourself on maybe that spectrum I just wrote out? And how do you characterize your approach to it?
When I started out, I was totally into hacking it together. Then I met Marcus, and he taught me that is not always the best strategy. But I'm not giving up on hacking. I try to hack, but while making it maintainable. It's like I feel like that's my. If I have to say what my biggest experience of working so long software engineering is, it's just to find the right balance between hacking and making it look pretty too.
Yeah, I'd call this pragmatism. And I mean, I think you kind of like I think there's a lot of similar stories as people do more software engineering and the big what do you like the big thing I like to talk about is like, okay, have you worked on something long enough that, 5 years later you is having to deal with the mistakes of the code you wrote 5 years before? And ultimately it's this idea of like, okay, I have different constraints. I have the constraint of time. I need to solve the problem and get it out there for value to a customer, whoever I'm ultimately solving the problem for. And I probably need to think about what this is going to be like in 5 years when I have to either maintain this, change this, or do that. Um, you have a nickname. I'm not sure everybody in the company knows it, but it's funny because one of the things that I would say, and your nickname is Thor's Hammer, because you oftentimes can come in and get an incredible amount of stuff done in a very short amount of time, and maybe there's some cleanup that needs to happen afterwards, right?
For sure.
Talk to me about that a little bit. Like, how did you get so productive and fast at developing?
I honestly don't know. I wish I knew. I just get very focused, I think, and just have. I think, like I said before, I like to solve problems. I like to solve the problem, and that there might be 5 things left behind that are not as great as they should be, but the problem is solved for now, and hopefully our tests say that I didn't break a lot of other stuff. Uh, um,
So
yeah.
the funny thing about that to me is, again, it goes back to this pragmatism of, I like to say in the company, the best strategy is speed. And I get pushback a lot on it because it's like, oh, but, you know, what about quality and error rate and these things? And I always say speed's a better strategy because if we're all essentially flying a plane while building it, keeping the plane in the sky is as important as making sure you're building the plane that you can continue to keep in the sky later. Like, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so you've been doing this for a while now. Uh, has it gotten boring? Are you interested in other things?
I don't think it hasn't gotten boring yet. There's always something new. I feel like that's also something I know I'm going back to that a lot, but solving problems, there's always new problems to solve. And thanks to my Thor's hammer approach, there's always a lot to clean up, so I never get quite bored. It's
That's job security right there.
oh yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I mean those problems have definitely changed as you started. For instance, I guess like originally, as we're taking PDFM and we get different PDFs that don't work, or we're adding new features that weren't in it. You also start to run into things like when we built our web framework in 2017. Uh, and ultimately we were really cutting edge, I think, on WASM and trying to do something difficult with WASM, and then the next thing you have to do is like, okay, load speed, performance, this and that. Talk a little bit about that experience from like what you were doing early days, and what you were doing ultimately when we released the web framework, and kind of like what you spend most of your time now doing.
That's interesting. In the beginning, we missed a lot of the basics that we didn't have, so we had to implement a lot of that. Be it Like PDFM has some annotation support, but we have better one, and we had to write that. And there was also a lot of, how to modify a PDF. PDFM is reasonably read-only. It does a few things where you can write, but when it comes to modifying PDFs, we had to do a lot of work. Getting all that running in WASM, I'm still sometimes confused that this works, but it does, and it works well. But yeah, the biggest issue we actually have in WASM is memory usage, which we probably can do something about soon, maybe. So the good thing is that we already were optimized for iPhones and Android phones, which back in the day at least didn't have a lot of memory. All of this is changing. Memory is getting kind of
No
bigger.
longer a constraint, yeah.
Yeah. Or file sizes, because you had your 64 gigabyte iPhone and you didn't want to download apps that are 200 megabytes big. Nowadays, not that big of a problem anymore. So the constraints have been lifted a little, and we can breathe a little easier.
One of the cool things I think that also kind of happened in that journey is like, okay, originally we're trying to get this render, we're trying to build the basic stuff, we're trying to get it to work on mobile phones. We now have a web framework, we have literally trying to run it in a browser. You have these memory constraints like this. And then lo and behold, the company goes through a transition period. We get, PE funding. And all of a sudden, the first company we buy is a really, I think, powerful image renderer, I don't know, a PDF parser, as well as an OCR machine, a conversion engine. Like, I mean, it's just nuts, and it's all written in C sharp. Uh, and then it was, hey, Patrick, how you doing? We want these features from this, and how are we going to get this in WASM? Tell me a little bit about what that was like, and kind of maybe some of the issues or things you had to, maybe what did you think about it at first? What did you think about it as you were doing it? What did you learn? And now looking back on it, think about it. Yeah.
When I was first told that, I was like, okay, that sounds impossible. But luckily, Microsoft and C Sharp really got. They realized the importance of WASM, I think, because running something in the browser safely, quickly is pretty powerful. Luckily, it's no Flash. It actually has, got some good speed. And I honestly don't know super much about this because Nick, I think you're first person you talked to, did most of this
Yeah.
stuff. I just helped out a little bit here and there. But Microsoft made this in the end. It was a little tricky for us because Microsoft was just starting to roll out all of these things. So it was kind of living on the bleeding edge of it and hoping that it doesn't break before they finally release it.
Yeah. You mentioned something earlier, and I think it's a unique spot. I don't think a lot of software engineers are in unless you're doing so. Like, there's the classic, I think, CRUD computing that you do, and I mean, there's probably a lot of applications these days. You're in this sort of setting where you're creating a core library that needs to have API exposed, also needs to really understand maybe the platform that it's exposed to. And you said, "Oh, hey, I get to dabble in all these other languages." Explain that a little bit. So, like, what do you mean by that? I act like I don't know anything, what is it that exactly like what are the problems you run into? Why do you need to know those other languages? And ultimately, why do you need to dabble in them, or you just do it because you like it?
Um, I could do without, but it's nice. It's fine. The main reason is that the core library, we say we don't break the platform stuff. When we commit something, CI runs, tests everything. If something breaks, we probably fix it ourselves. just to keep the other people doing the things that they need to do. Obviously, it can happen that it's just something really super big and it's more efficient if someone from the team looks at it, but mostly it's not too big of a deal. We also try to help out on the web SDK a bit more than the others, and try to optimize things there the most we can.
Is each platform so like, okay, we have an iOS SDK, we have an Android SDK, we have a, I guess, JavaScript or web TypeScript based SDK, and then we have this C++ library that ultimately they're using those in different languages and different platforms. Some have more native platform features that we just need to connect into, some of them have less. Uh, yeah, explain a little bit. If you is iOS the easiest platform to build on and do, or is Java, Arcs Java and ultimately Android the better one, or is web a little bit different than these? Like from your perspective, how do you feel about them?
Android is the hardest because
Why?
we have a lot of layers to go through. Like in iOS, for example, you can directly call C++ code. That makes it pretty easy. In Java, you have to go through GNI, which is the Java native interface, I think, and we use a framework called Ginny for that, but it's still you have quite a bit of limitations there, what you can do and how many things you can request and things like that, and it's usually the most separated. Web is in a interesting spot because it's WASM and we have to kind of make up our own stuff a little bit. We gave that a couple of tries. I think we're on iteration 3 now. We also shared it with the document engine because that used the same language to speak. I think this one might be the nicest, mostly because it's the most encapsulated, maybe. Like in iOS, it's nice because you can easily call C++ code, but it also means you have C++ code there, which can iOS can do a lot more things in core than other platforms because we allow them to, because they can just access anything, which means we don't have as much control to make sure it's used as it should. It usually is. I love the iOS team and the iOS SDK, but it's also the platform where we started with, so there's the most history in it. And software engineering history, it means stuff that you wish you had time to do different.
Yeah, why don't we, I mean, I'm trying to think now. So if it's 2014, 15, you join. I know we adopted it around 2015 was when we adopted PDFium and forked it. Okay, you're at 10 years now. So not even 5 years looking back, 10 years looking back. How does 10-year older Patrick feel about 10-year younger Patrick?
Oh,
What do you wish you would have done? Maybe what are the things you wish you would have known 10 years ago that you now know?
you know how we talked about Thor's hammer? I wish we would have got me a little hammer, just a tiny one, sometimes.
That's
But
awesome.
there's always the thing, we had to get that stuff out, and it's good that it got out. It got us where we are. So, it's, as you said, it's better to keep the plane flying. But still, you know,
So you'd say it's more that you're having to do more cleanup or you're getting the ultimately you're having to deal with some of I'm gonna call it shortcuts that we made to keep the plane
sure.
flying now. How do you deal with those? It's ultimately tech debt, right?
Yeah,
So
it is.
what's your approach to, yeah, let's say the balance, like, create tech debt, deal with tech debt. How do you think about this?
Um, I try to fix some of the tech debt if I work on something in that area, if I can. Like I'm under no illusions that we have time to just refactor everything for a year because who does that? We want to solve problems, not change the internals while everything else stays the same. But there's always a little bit of time, to. I think when you estimate working on a new feature or a bug fix, and that stuff could use some refactoring, I would, give it, add that to the estimate a little bit, just clean it up a little bit. So slowly, we get better, it gets easier.
Would you say, because I mean, this is the great segue to the next topic, but when you think about, going from not really a completely greenfield project, but a lot of some of the stuff you built was greenfield, to now maintaining and almost, dare I say, legacy code base. I also think what people have to really understand is how people use our SDKs, because it's not as a deterministic type thing. You build this, and then a customer comes and wants to use it in a way you never thought it would be used, but they want to use it, and that's our job, is to make it as versatile as possible. Okay, you're 10 years further. You kind of know that you're having to clean up tech debt. Clearly, I know your approach is to be pragmatic, but now you're thinking about the future, and yet we still have customers and you still have requests coming from literally all over the company.
Oh yeah.
How in your mind do you think about that balancing act? Do you try to have the little Thor's hammer now compared to the big one, or how has it changed?
I think it is the little Thor's hammer now. It's our product got far more mature. It's been used. I've been working on it for 10 years. We have many tests. We have many customers that do a lot of things. I mean, I would be lying to say that there's no bugs. We always have bugs. We always fix bugs. But I think it's manageable at least. I think it's pretty good. And yeah.
Are you aware? Are you more aware when you're doing something that's going to give you problems in the future? And are you more aware of, yeah, I'm going to have those problems, but I need to make this decision now than you were before?
Yeah, for sure. I learned a lot over. I'm not sure if I ever maintained a software project for that long before, and you really, definitely getting older, not sure about wiser, but a little bit. You gain experience. Oh, I did that 10 years ago, and that causes me still problems. I'm gonna do it different this time. There's a lot of experience you gain. That's
So the reason I say it was a great segue is we live in the world now of, AI, LLMs, and context windows that are getting bigger. Uh, and I remember probably even 3 to 4 months ago, to tell you how rapidly this is changing. I remember saying to you, "Oh, Patrick, have you looked into AI? Have you started doing this stuff?" And you kind of scoffed at me. Uh, you know,
yeah.
bah, humbug. I deal with large code bases. This is so much complexity. AI will never doing it. Um, how do you think about that now? What do you think about AI and programming? Because I do think one of the things is AI can be probably the largest Thor hammer possible, but leave a
Oh yeah.
wake that is way too big, right?
Oh
And at
yeah.
the same
Oh yeah.
time, it still can be used to do things. So, how do you view AI and kind of vibe coding and ultimately the use of kind of an LLM in, software development? Maybe we'll get to it a little bit now. Won't, try to teaser here. Won't try to spoil answer. How are you using it? But first, let's talk about how you thought about it, uh, and how you think about it now and things like this.
Sure. In the beginning, I try to be hype resistant because it's usually a good thing. There's too many hypes going on in the world, so I'm kind of very standoffish in the beginning. I'm using Visual Studio Code as my IDE of choice, and for any other C++ developer that listens to this, yeah, I'm really doing that. It works. It's weird, but try. And they slowly started introducing Copilot into it, and I used it a little bit, and it was nice, but not super smart, but a nice autocomplete. Then I talked to you and, told you about humbug. And I think I changed my mind about whether this whole thing a lot, but maybe not that I think that it can do everything that a software engineer can do. I think it's extremely powerful in the hand of an experienced software engineer because we can actually direct it and get it to do stuff that in a way where we know it's going to produce something reasonably useful, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like it has a high learning curve, even though it doesn't seem so, because you're just writing text, and how can that have a learning curve? But I think there's a big high learning curve to figure out how to get that thing to actually do what you want it to do. But when you get it to do that, it's extremely impressive.
Yeah, the thing I like to say with it, and I think you followed me, I kind of, you know, 2 years of a software engineering degree, maybe dabbled in JavaScript, know a little bit of Objective-C, or little of object-oriented programming, like enough to be dangerous to talk about it. But I wasn't sitting behind a computer doing anything, and I think I remember when Anthropic and Claude launched, and okay, this thing can build projects for me, but oh, I got to take this and I got to set up the folder and I got to get all the dependencies and install all the requirements and oh shit, I got to update ASDF or whatever package manager I'm using, and this is so annoying and so la la la. And the thing I remember a year ago, sitting at our CTO Matei's house, sitting next to him, going, "This is so incredible, but God, I need something to help me with this. Is so annoying dealing with setting up an IDE in an environment." Um, and then lo and behold, a couple months ago now, Claude Code drops, nice little CLI tool. And for me, it was like, oh wow, this solved the problem I had. Um, but I think you make a really, really good point. And I think this applies to, I mean, let's say on the marketing content side, generating marketing content. Uh, I really noticed very early on there's two skills that really matter when working with AI. And I wonder if you agree with them. The first one you stated is like, I actually think having domain expertise is almost mission critical, at least at the current state that these language models are at, and doing it. And I would even say me working with Claude Code without the domain knowledge of, like, I don't know, a specific language or something like this hinders my ability to work in it. But it's the same thing with content. Like, I need to know what good content looks like for me ultimately to do it. Um, the other side of it is this idea that, I don't know, if I haven't used it and I don't have knowledge of using the tool and how I need to direct it, prompt it, man, like yeah, like that also is a learning curve as well. Um, and so I mean for me it's interesting because I think with Cloud Code I've gotten to the point where I've learned a lot of that stuff. So I'm actually better on the working with the tooling side, but obviously don't really have the domain knowledge. And it's interesting with somebody like you that has massive domain knowledge. Uh, I had the real crux was, how do I get you to learn how to use the tool and get value out of it? How are you using it today? Like, let's say latest, Sonnet 4 or Opus or, whatever model of choice that you're using. How do you think about using it today?
I'm primarily using Cloud Code now. I don't know what model. I just let it do its thing. I'm easy. Um, um, I There's many things that I think there's two big things I do. Every person working on a computer always has the trouble like, ugh, I wish the computer could do that automatically for me. But who has the time to script all that? I have the knowledge how to write those scripts, but I don't have the time, or I want to do the context switch to write that script, because that's honestly, if I'm deep inside a PDF problem and now I want to write a little script that does something completely different, but that would help me, it's annoying. I let Cloud Code write it. and it's doing a pretty good job. I just tell it what it needs to do, go back and forth 5 times, and suddenly what I needed to do that was annoying, that I need to do often, is automated. It's great. I use that same stuff for CI jobs. Like if we have anything especially new that I want to test or get some aggregated information out of our CI or something, it's super easy to just have it right there. Like for one-off targeted things, I think it's amazing. Like, don't even need to give it a lot, and it just does its thing.
I was gonna say the interesting thing you bring up there is tooling. Like what you're saying is, okay, I have this primary thing that I'm doing or project I'm in. I know I could have a tooling that could help me do the project better, but I don't want a context switch to build the tool right now. But if I had it, it would be really great. And now all of a sudden I have something that can quickly produce the tooling in probably a limited capacity, well enough or good enough that I can now do what I'm doing better and faster. Is that right?
Yeah. And there's still a little bit of a context switch involved. Obviously, you're writing a tool in an LLM, but it's like I don't have to think about anything complex. I can keep the complex thought on where they should be, and the easy stuff is just, tell it what it should do. And does a pretty good job. Super useful. I wrote like 3, 4 things like that already. It's,
The other thing I wonder, because we talked about a little bit of your origin story. You coming from Austria, you're in the US now. Uh, the thing that I've heard people be worried about is like, oh, well, I'm not a native English speaker, so this is going to limit my ability to use this thing, or ultimately. Have you found any of this? Which, I mean, obviously, you've been in the US now for a while, so you're a pretty good English
yeah.
speaker. But
Yeah, I think that helps. But I also think the LLMs are really good at understanding me when I don't make sense. Um,
yeah, no, I think that's anybody. I think one of the things is better at, but I do think the other thing is like I don't necessarily think it's the words you use, but it's more the detail or precision of how you direct it, right? So this is where the domain expertise things I think really comes into play. Is like you got to know enough of what you want it to do. Don't get me wrong, you can use it to help you figure out better, right? But then you need to write to it exactly kind of what you want it to do. Because it's not good at like, I don't know, build me website and it doesn't read your mind and build website, right? Have you found that to be the same? I just wonder. That's been my
absolutely.
experience.
Yeah, no, you have to be pretty precise. If I think I'm also using a Thor Sam's approach to LLM, so I'm not super precise in the beginning, but I'm sitting there ready on my escape key to tell it, no, do it different, no, do it, no, and so get the details out like this. I'm sure it would be more efficient if I write out in the beginning, but sometimes you do that, but it definitely, the more precise you can give it the information, the better it is.
It's really interesting you say that because I always, I read Philip Spiess's blog about how he uses Cloud Code, and Philip helped build our web framework. I think he's now at Tailwind, and he said that. He said the thing I do is I monitor it as soon as I see it going in a direction. I don't know, I press escape, and I assume that's the way you use it as well from what
Yeah,
you just said.
yeah.
And it's funny because me not understanding the domain knowledge, maybe of the language or whatever it's doing, I let it go through, and then I have it review it, and then write tests to do it, and then I have it loop and loop and loop and loop and loop
Yeah,
and loop until
yeah.
it fixes the problem. And I actually think that's why you were probably more efficient with it. Again, the domain expertise.
Yeah, I do know a lot about the code and how it should be and this and that, so I can easily, quickly tell it, nah. But I also do the looping thing sometimes. I wrote that PDF MCP server so it can look into the PDFs, and sometimes I just give it a broken test, a PDF, and tell it, go away, do things, while I do more important things. And I can't say that I've ever just accepted the solution it came up with, but it usually at least found the problem and fixed it in a way that I could easily modify to fix it in a good way instead of a what did you do, LLM way? But it's still helpful because I don't have to think about it and it finds the problem. And I have enough domain knowledge that I know if that is actually the problem or if it's just fixed something to hide the problem. So,
Yeah, that's interesting. I've tried to like, I'm all about analogies in cars, right?
mm,
This is
oh yeah.
too bad about it, right? Uh, the thing I always think about is like, okay, if essentially a good software engineer programming, you had IDEs, you had, I don't know, languages got simpler, they try to give you more training wheels, right? So you go from like I'm walking to a bike with training wheels or something like this. It's like LLMs came along and people expected to be autonomous driving, and instead it's just a car. Right. And so you still got to learn to drive the car. It's probably like a car with a stick shift at the moment, right? And
Oh
it's
yeah.
like you got to know the roads, you got to know how to get to where you're going, the most efficient way to get to where you're going, and how to change gears and not wrecking everyone else along. And it's interesting to me, I think the biggest hiccup is the skepticism and the expectation that if it's not autonomous driving, it's not faster than me on the training wheels bike. Did you say that analogy? Am I right, wrong? You would caveat it. How would like, what do you
I
think?
think you're pretty spot on. It's just like, it's the more I used it, the less I got concerned about my job security because I feel like it's best when it's in the hand of a senior engineer that can use it. But if you expect it to just do it for you, maybe we'll get there. I'm trying to be conservative with my predictions because I've been a little wrong. It's
No, I think the way you stated is really clear. And I've also really truly believed this that you know the hard thing with automation, period. Uh, you know, when like software engineers, a lot of what they did was automate things, right? But automation is fun until automation comes from the thing you love and the thing you've done. And then the worst thing is when automation comes and it comes for whatever you love or do, your first thought is, oh, scary, I'm going to be replaced,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
this thing can't be me, can't be as good as me, right? And I actually think I mean, don't get me wrong, there's been a bunch of even kind of marketing hype around it that almost pushes this narrative like, I mean, the talk about AGI, the focus on it, talk about replacing people with AI agents and this stuff. And I think actually, what's really, I think the comment's always been made, it's not like, AI is not going to replace you, someone with AI that will. And I actually think it's really more just kind of you know, an evolution of software engineering that now like AI, like senior engineers, domain knowledge, people with high domain knowledge with AI can do so much more than they could have done prior to it. Um, and this kind of goes into the like, the evidence of this is we've heard all these tech companies, 40 to 50% of our code is written by AI now, right? But yet they're still hiring engineers, which doesn't make sense unless if this thing allows you to do more, and again, sorry, car analogy, when we could walk, we could go places. Now with a car, we could go to the same place faster, which meant we could go to more places in the same amount of time it would take us to walk. And so the only question is, what's the size of markets? What's the size of problems? And what's the size of ideas that these two things together can do? Um, I also think the other thing you mentioned there was this idea of the models currently, and there's a big kind of question mark. How much smarter will the models get? I do think the tooling will get better. Like so, like we had from 1 year, we went from no Claude code, no CLI tool to having a CLI tool. I think we'll see more of this as well, and maybe more people with domain expertise that isn't the actual skill to accomplish it will get tooling that will help them with the skill, right? I don't think this idea of like domain expertise around a problem, the model may know it even, but how well can you direct the model to do it, I think becomes always the limiting factor.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
Patrick, I want to give you a chance. We're wrapping up here. Um, you know, I want to give you, you said I'm getting older but not wiser, and I would disagree with that because I think experience does help if you reflect on it and you aren't rigid in it, right?
Sure, I agree.
Um, you're young, Patrick, but you're in today's world. You're really interested in computers. You're passionate about them. What advice do you give that person? Take your time. Think about what are the things that you think, software engineers need to know today, what's going on, all those things. What would you say to, let's even say a young Patrick or even someone like that that's doing it?
I feel like young Patrick would have been even more dismissive of AI stuff because that was just too much magic and there's my fun stuff that I'm doing. But I feel like we just have to accept the reality that LLMs are here and we have to start working with it. And if you don't want that, it's gonna be problematic for you, I think. And it's like, I also think you have to try it for a while because there is a steep learning curve, even if it doesn't seem like it. I think I said that, but yeah,
Yeah.
just keep using it and keep learning it. Don't accept what the LLM writes either. Just look through it, learn from it. Tell it did it wrong. They don't mind. Tell it to rewrite everything. It doesn't mind. It's one of my favorite features. It's like, you did this wrong, do it differently. And it just writes 500 lines of code again. And it's like, okay, cool. You were right. Um, Embrace it. Gotta. I feel like that's where we're going.
You said you always cared about solving problems. Um, one of the things I always liked is in that, and you didn't say it specifically to this, but it's normally solving customer problems, right? It's not just solving a puzzle or this or that. You like providing value with time. How do you think, how important do you think that skill is now if you're a young software engineer in a world of LLM, AI-driven development, that you actually think and you take that pragmatic approach versus, how big of a hammer do you let Thor go with?
I really think it's for most engineers, it's probably going to be the most important thing to just solve customers' problems instead of worry too much about the other stuff. I mean, there is always problems that are not like that. Google has to have the infrastructure set up and running, and that LLM, it's nice, but you can't just solve a customer problem there. But for most engineers, I think just focus on the customer's problem, try to fix it, and try to use a little Thor's hammer if you can. I don't know.
Last question, and then we'll wrap up. If
Sounds
you
good.
weren't a software engineer, what would you have done? Alternative life, multi-universe. What does Patrick do if he doesn't get into software engineering? Or
I don't
what
know.
would you say? Come on, think. You gotta give me an answer here. I want to know. I want to know a little bit more about the Patrick outside of software engineering.
The thing is, it would still have to be something in front of a computer because I don't know, honestly. The thing is, if it wouldn't have been software engineering, I probably would still want to solve customers' problems, and even if that is UX, UI design or something like that, it's similar. But will you accept this as an answer, or is it?
No, I think it's good because it hints at what your core motivation is, and I think you want to spend your time providing value
Yeah,
is what it really comes down to, and what you value is solving problems for people. You see these
yeah.
problems, you think you know how to figure it out, and you do it. I think there's a ton of jobs like that. I lied, not last question.
Ah,
One more question, and the reason I asked this question is because we didn't talk about it enough. You know, I played Counter-Strike in college. God, this was before even like I played the beta. So I mean, even before like Now I think we're on like CS:GO 2 or some shit like that. I don't
Who
even know.
knows?
But you've done the good job of always introducing me to new games. And normally what ends up happening is you give up the game and I get stuck with the addiction of the game.
Yep. Yep.
Um, what's your favorite games right now?
Right now, I'm stuck on a game, Satisfactory.
Tell me a little bit about it. What type of game is it?
Um, you build a factory to make resources, and you put these together and together and together and together for years till you get the right things out. It's basically just optimizing.
Really scratches the itch, whether it's in work or in
Yeah,
fun. That's so cool.
yeah, but you will get stuck too.
Oh God, I'm gonna check it out. I will tell you right now, I finally got off of Apex Legends, which you put me on literally right when it was launched. I think I got through like 20 seasons or something, and I finally was like, stop doing this.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
but then a friend of mine pulled me back into WoW Classic when the anniversaries came out.
Oh,
And I really think I play it because it's just click a button,
yeah.
do a thing. I don't even do it for the story. You know that I'm not a story person,
Uh,
but it's
uh,
just really kind of a good, relaxing. I'm pursuing something and doing some goal, and yet I'm not really thinking about it, and it's fun. And of course, really, with all gaming, for me at least, you do it with people or around people that you know and you can talk to, and it's you meet cool people that you'd have never met if I didn't.
for sure.
That's one of the things I loved about the internet, and definitely gaming as
Oh
well.
yeah.
Okay, Patrick, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
you coming on, being guinea pig number three. I'm sure
That's me.
if people wanted to, I don't know, follow what Patrick's doing, get in touch with Patrick or whatever, how would you direct them to do that?
I
Or are
think
you the
I'm a
no social
blue
type as
sky.
well?
No, I think I
Okay.
have a blue sky account with Patrik at Weiskircher name as my handle.
Nice.